She thought marrying a rich man meant her struggles were over. But that mansion held storms no one warned her about. They called it the Winter Estate. 5 acres of perfect grass, a marble staircase that curled like a ribbon, and chandeliers that blinked like stars above your head. But behind all that beauty, baby, was a silence sharp enough to bleed. Her name was Leanne, dark-skinned, soft-spoken, the kind of woman who walks like she's carrying whole generations on her back. She met Henry Winter at a gallery in Atlanta. He said she looked like a painting come to life. 6 months later, she was walking down the aisle in ivory lace, his family watching like they'd just swallowed lemons. The first time she stepped into that mansion, she had her mama's Bible in one hand and hope in the other. But his mother, Evelyn Winter, only saw one thing, her skin. "I didn't know Henry liked exotic beauty," Evelyn said that first night, swirling her wine like she was stirring trouble. Leanne smiled the way her grandma taught her. Polite, quiet, dignified, but inside, her spirit curled tight. Evelyn was the kind of woman who weaponized compliments. "Oh, darling, that color's almost flattering on your complexion. I do hope you're not one of those women who expect compensation for love." And that night, at dinner, the night everything cracked, it was lobster on crystal plates, linen napkins folded like swans. Evelyn sat at the head, dressed in navy silk, her pearls choking her throat like truth she couldn't swallow. Leanne was telling a story about her grandmother, how she used to sell sweet tea on Auburn Avenue, rain or shine. She said it with pride, but Evelyn just tilted her head and laughed. "Oh," she said, "I suppose everyone needs a dream. Though I imagine you've done quite well for yourself, haven't you, dear? I mean, you married money." The room went still. Henry shifted in his seat. Someone dropped a fork. Leanne looked Evelyn dead in the eye and smiled. But it wasn't the kind of smile she'd worn before. It wasn't polite. It wasn't afraid. It was the kind of smile that carried thunder behind its teeth. Because what Evelyn didn't know was that Leanne had found something in the library upstairs. A letter, a name, a secret the Winter family had buried beneath generations of shame and inheritance. And that night, right there at the dinner table, with the wine still breathing and the candles still flickering, Leanne decided to burn the silence down. But first, she reached for her wine, took a sip, and said, "Mrs. Winter, I know exactly what you think of me, but maybe you should worry less about gold diggers and more about the skeletons buried in your own closet." Evelyn's face didn't change, but her hand began to shake. And baby, you should have seen the way Henry looked at his mother then, like he'd just realized he didn't know her at all. Now hold on, sugar, because what Leanne found in that library, that was just the beginning. They call it inheritance, but sometimes it's just poison wrapped in satin ribbon. After the dinner, after that knife disguised as kindness, after Henry's gaze cracked open like a window in a storm, Leanne climbed the stairs of that mansion like a woman heading to battle. Her heart was pounding, but her face calm, because a black woman learns early, never let the world see your wounds, not even when they burn. The library was the only place in that house where she could breathe. It smelled of old leather, polished wood, and secrets tired of hiding. She found the false panel by accident, one crooked book, a gentle push, and the wall opened like it was tired of keeping lies. Inside, a box, aged but untouched, wrapped in faded blue ribbon with a yellowed envelope on top, a name written in delicate cursive, "To Evelyn, in case I don't return." It was from Henry's father, the man who died quietly, left behind a fortune, a name, and it seemed, a confession. Leanne opened it slowly, like the paper might scream. "My dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, then the truth has finally grown teeth." Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the justice rising up in her chest, with every word. "I know you hated what I did, that you never forgave me for loving a woman outside our world, a woman with skin like wet earth, eyes that saw straight through me. You called it a phase, said I would shame our lineage, but Evelyn, she was the only love I ever knew." The letter dropped into her lap like a verdict. She looked out the tall window. And there Evelyn stood, in the garden, alone, like the ghosts had already started circling her. Because that letter, it said more. It told of a lost child, a name never recorded. A son Henry's father had with that black woman before he vanished from public view. And if it was true, if Evelyn had erased an heir to protect her perfect pedigree, Leanne folded the letter, gently, put it back in the box, but tucked a copy in her coat pocket, because now she had the key, not just to expose Evelyn, but to rewrite the Winter family's legacy. That night, Henry came to the bedroom, head low, voice careful. She was cruel. But what did you mean at dinner? About skeletons? Leanne turned slowly, looked him straight in the eye, calm as a woman who's done being quiet. Do you love your mother, Henry? Of course. Then you better get ready to meet the real version. Silence. Long. Heavy. I need to show you something, she said. But once I do, we can't go back. And just as she reached to hand him the letter, they heard it. Footsteps. Fast. Panicked. Evelyn. In the hallway. And before Leanne could say another word, the door swung open. And Evelyn's face was no longer the face of an elegant matriarch. It was the face of a woman who knew the past had finally come knocking. You shouldn't have gone in there, Leanne. Her voice was low. But baby, it carried enough poison to kill a forest. There's something chilling about a rich woman whispering in the dark, like velvet stretched over a blade. Evelyn stepped into the room, closing the door behind her with a quiet click, like she was sealing in a secret. The air thickened. Henry stood frozen, caught between two worlds, the mother who raised him with cold perfection, and the wife who now held truth in her trembling hands. Evelyn's eyes locked on the envelope, not on Leanne. Never on Leanne. I warned you, she said, her voice calm and cruel. Some histories are meant to be buried. Leanne didn't flinch, didn't blink. She stepped forward, slow and steady, until they were face to face. Is that what you did, Evelyn? Her voice was soft, but it struck like thunder. Buried a whole child because his mother was too dark for your world? Henry gasped, just barely, like part of him already knew, but had never dared say it out loud. Evelyn's mask didn't crack. Not yet. Your father, she said, was a fool, chasing fantasy in the dirt. She said dirt like it burned her tongue, but I made sure the Winter name stayed clean. Leanne's whole body burned with fury, but her voice never rose. You mean white? Silence. That silence, baby, was louder than any scream. Henry sat down, slowly. His hand reached for the letter like it might explode. Is it true? He asked. Evelyn didn't answer. She turned to the window, fingers resting on the sill, and then she said something that made Leanne's stomach turn. He wasn't ours, that child. He didn't belong in this house. He would have ruined everything. Leanne's hands curled into fists, because there it was, not even hidden. The kind of hatred that dresses itself in diamonds and smiles. The kind that doesn't need to shout, because it's always been in power. You mean he was yours? Leanne said. And you erased him. Evelyn turned then, and for the first time, there was something behind her eyes. Fear, shame, or maybe just the weight of a lie too old to carry any longer. You have no idea what this world does to women like you, she hissed. I was protecting Henry, protecting you from the shame. Leanne laughed once, short, sharp, like something breaking. I've lived shame, she said. I've eaten it, watched it follow my mother to cleaning jobs, heard it whispered about my skin since I was 5 years old. But I never buried a child because of it. Henry looked up, eyes wide, full of a hurt he didn't have words for yet. Did Dad love her? He asked. Evelyn hesitated. And then, for the first time, she cracked. She nodded. He would have left us, she whispered, if I hadn't stopped him. Leanne's breath caught. There it was, the truth. Not just prejudice, but fear. That her power, her whiteness, her control, was never enough to keep him. And now, the walls of that mansion were starting to whisper back. Because if there was another heir, someone with winter blood and dark skin, that family fortune didn't just belong to Evelyn and Henry. It might belong to someone else entirely. As someone that Evelyn had spent a lifetime hiding. Leanne stepped back. This isn't over, she said. I'm going to find him. And Evelyn, with her pearls tight around her neck, whispered, if you do, I'll make sure you lose everything. But what Evelyn didn't know was that Leanne had already lost too much to be scared now. And somewhere, out there in the city, was a man who had no idea the name he was born for. Was Winter. Sometimes the people who erase you are the ones who feared your light the most. Leanne couldn't sleep that night. She lay in that cold, expensive bed, with its gold-threaded pillows and perfectly folded sheets, and thought about a child, a black boy, maybe grown now, living somewhere in Atlanta or Birmingham or Harlem, walking streets he didn't even know he deserved to rise above. A boy who had winter blood in his veins, but no name, no inheritance, no truth. She got up before the sun, wrote a note for Henry. I need to find what your mother buried, not just for me, for him, for you. She left before anyone woke, took the copy of the letter, took her silence, and turned it into purpose. Atlanta was already buzzing when she arrived, humidity hanging in the air like thick breath. She went to the records office first, then the church where Henry's father used to give donations, then to the little barber shop in West End where someone once whispered the name Samuel. 3 hours passed, then 5. Finally, a clerk, a tired woman with eyes that knew more than she said, leaned in and whispered, Try Mercy House, down on Auburn. There was a boy left behind by a woman who, well, she didn't make it long, but she left a letter, said the boy's father had money, a name. Leanne thanked her, didn't cry. She couldn't. Not yet. Mercy House sat like a ghost at the end of the block. Old bricks, chipped paint, a front porch that sagged like it had seen too much sorrow. The woman at the front desk looked at Leanne like she recognized something in her, something familiar. You looking for Elijah? Leanne's breath caught. I don't know, she said. Maybe. The woman nodded, slow. Dark-skinned boy, bright eyes, never fit in nowhere. Told us once his mama said his name was meant for more. Leanne clutched the envelope in her bag. Elijah? She whispered. The woman stepped into the back room, came out with a photo. A boy, maybe 10, skin deep as coffee, smile too big for his face, eyes full of stories he hadn't been allowed to tell. He left years ago, said he was going to change the world, never came back. Leanne traced the photo with her fingers. Do you have a last name? No, just Elijah. His file's thin. But the woman opened a drawer, pulled out a folded paper. It was barely legible. But in a corner, scribbled in childish handwriting, it said, My name's Elijah. Mama said my daddy rich, but I don't need his money. I got her love. That's enough. Leanne pressed the paper to her chest. Tears rolled, silent and slow, because she realized something. Right then, this wasn't just about money. This wasn't even about Evelyn. It was about restoring someone's name. And baby, ain't nothing holier than that. She stepped outside, dialed Henry, told him everything, and for a long time, he didn't speak. But when he did, his voice cracked open. I want to meet him, he said. I want to know my brother. Leanne nodded, the wind catching her hair like a blessing. But just as she was about to speak again, a black car pulled up beside her. Tinted windows, engine still running. The door opened slowly, and Evelyn stepped out. No pearls today, just rage. You think you're righteous, she said. You think truth matters more than blood? Leanne looked her dead in the eye. No, I think truth is blood. Evelyn's lips curled. She pulled something from her purse, a legal folder. She held it out. You go public with that letter, she whispered, and I'll see to it that you walk away with nothing. Not Henry, not this family, not a cent. But Leanne just smiled, because what Evelyn didn't know was that Elijah was no longer a secret, and he was already on his way. Some meetings don't begin with handshakes. They begin with silence so heavy it makes your bones ache. Leanne waited at the little cafe on Edgewood. Nothing fancy, just coffee strong enough to wake your soul, and a waitress who called you baby whether she knew you or not. Henry sat across from her, suit still sharp, but his eyes softer now, like something inside him had finally cracked open, and he was trying to learn how to breathe through it. And then he came in. Elijah, tall, dark-skinned, hair in soft coils, wearing the kind of thrift store jacket that don't look like much till you see the way he carries it. That boy walked like he'd been through fire. and built his own damn wings from the ashes. He stopped just inside the door, spotted Leanne, then his eyes landed on Henry. And baby, the silence that followed, it wasn't empty, it was sacred. Henry stood slowly, walked toward him like a man approaching a mirror he wasn't sure he wanted to look into. "Are you?" he started, but the words failed. Elijah tilted his head. "You the son she kept," he said, voice calm, no bitterness, just truth laid bare. Henry swallowed, nodded once. "Yeah," he said, "and you're the one she tried to erase." Elijah looked him over, then glanced at Leanne. "She the one who found me?" Leanne smiled, eyes warm and full. "No, baby. You weren't lost, just hidden. I just opened the door." They sat down, the three of them, coffee between them, history hanging in the air. Elijah spoke first. "She told me once, my mama, said my daddy was a man with a name made of marble, but he chose silence, and silence broke her." Henry's hands trembled. "She told me he died in a car crash. I never knew." He paused, looked at Elijah. "I never knew I had a brother." Elijah leaned back, arms folded. "Well, now you do." They talked for hours. Leanne barely said a word. She just listened to the two sons of the same man, raised in different worlds by different truths. One with silver spoons and chandeliers, the other with scraped knees and foster homes. But blood don't lie. And by the end, Henry said something no one expected. "I want you in the will." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "I don't need your money." "I'm not offering money," Henry said. "I'm offering your place." Leanne held her breath, because that was the thing Evelyn feared most. Not losing cash, not losing face, but losing the power to define who belonged. Later that evening, Leanne returned to the mansion. Henry stayed behind with Elijah, and waiting for her in the grand foyer, Evelyn. She was holding a photo. It was old, sepia-toned. A man, Henry's father, smiling beside a woman whose eyes looked just like Elijah's. "I thought if I destroyed every trace," Evelyn said softly, "he'd be forgotten." Leanne walked past her, slow. "Baby, don't you know by now? What's meant to rise always does." Evelyn looked up, her voice bitter. "He's not one of us." Leanne turned. "No, you're not one of him." And then she kept walking. But just before she reached the staircase, Evelyn whispered, "You think you've won, but you don't know what I'm capable of." Leanne paused, halfway up, didn't turn. "I know exactly what you're capable of," she said. Then she kept going, because she wasn't afraid of Evelyn Winter anymore. But baby, maybe she should have been, because that night, someone broke into Mercy House, and Elijah's file was gone. Some truths don't go quietly. They scream from the cracks in the walls. And baby, this house was full of screams. Mercy House had seen a lot, but never this. The staff found the file cabinet torn open, papers scattered, only one folder missing, Elijah's. The director called Leanne just after sunrise. She drove back in silence. No music, no tears, just that slow-burning rage that sits in a woman's chest when she knows they're still trying it. When she arrived, the old woman at the front desk, Miss Bernice, shook her head and handed her a note. It was taped to the broken drawer. 4 words. Some names stay buried. Leanne didn't need to guess. It was Evelyn. And she wasn't just trying to erase Elijah's file. She was trying to rewrite history. Again. But what Evelyn forgot was this. Leanne came from women who remembered everything. They didn't need paperwork to prove blood. Their truth lived in stories, in names whispered over kitchen sinks, in photos tucked behind Bibles and pressed flowers. Leanne took the note, folded it, and slipped it into her purse, right next to her grandmother's rosary. Later that day, she met Elijah and Henry again, this time at the Winter law firm, because Henry had made a decision. He was updating the estate documents. Elijah didn't want the money, but Henry was giving him a seat at the table anyway. A name, a place. The lawyer, Mr. Whitlow, an old white man with a stiff voice and slower hands, looked over the papers. Then he paused. "There's something you should see." He opened a drawer, pulled out a sealed envelope, unmarked. He looked at Leanne. "This was left with your copy of the will, Mr. Winter, years ago, but we were instructed not to open it unless someone named Elijah came forward." Henry took it, eyes wide. He opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten letter. and a photo. The letter read, "If Elijah ever finds his way to you, don't shut the door. I couldn't protect him, but maybe you can." It was signed, "Father, the photo." A baby in someone's arms, a woman smiling softly, wrapped in a floral dress. Elijah. He stared at it for a long time, then said nothing. Didn't need to, because everything Evelyn tried to destroy lived right there in his face, in his hands, in the man he became, without any of them. Later that night, Leanne returned to the mansion once more. Evelyn was waiting. Of course she was. She stood by the fireplace, drink in hand, eyes colder than the ice clinking in her glass. "You think this makes you righteous?" she asked. "Dragging filth into my bloodline." Leanne didn't move. "I didn't drag anything. He belongs here. You're the one who doesn't." Evelyn's laugh was brittle. "I built this house." "No, baby," Leanne said. "You bought it, but you never built anything but walls." She handed Evelyn the note from Mercy House. "I know what you did, but it won't stop anything. Not now." Evelyn's face cracked, just for a second, but Leanne saw it. The fear, the guilt, the storm. "You're going to ruin everything," Evelyn whispered. Leanne leaned in close, so close. Their breaths touched. "No, sugar," she said. "I'm going to rebuild it. With truth, with names that matter, and with a portrait over that fireplace." She paused. "One that actually deserves to be there." And with that, she walked away. Left Evelyn standing in a house full of ghosts and glitter. But baby, ghosts don't stay silent forever. That night, Leanne received an anonymous text. A photo of a fire. Elijah's childhood shelter. Burning. Some people burn things to bury the past. But all fire does is bring it into the light. Leanne stared at the photo on her phone. Flames rising. Smoke curling into the sky like a prayer made of ash. Mercy House was burning. And everyone knew who struck the match, even if no one saw her do it. Elijah arrived 10 minutes later, eyes wide, breath shallow. "They said nobody was hurt," he said, voice trembling. "But they lost everything. All the files, all the pictures, all the names." Leanne touched his shoulder. "No, baby," she said, her voice low but strong. "She didn't burn the truth, just the paper." Elijah sat down on the porch step, hands clasped. Why would she go that far? Leanne looked out at the street. The cars, the people, the world still spinning, because she built her whole life on a lie. And you're the living proof she couldn't erase. Henry called not long after. His voice was tight, clipped, shaken. "She's denying everything. Said she was here all night. But the police, they found an old scarf near the fire. Silk, navy blue, her initials stitched inside." Elijah didn't flinch. "She won't stop." "No," Leanne said. "She won't." But that night, Leanne realized something Evelyn had never counted on. They weren't alone anymore. This wasn't just Leanne versus Evelyn, or Elijah versus the winter name. It was truth versus silence. And baby, silence had lost its grip. The next morning, a local journalist called Leanne, someone from her college days. "I heard about the fire," the woman said. "And I heard why. Do you want to tell the story, Leanne? On record?" Leanne paused, looked at Elijah. He gave her a quiet nod. "And so," she said yes. The article dropped 2 days later. Front page on a Sunday. Headline bold and heavy. "The son they tried to bury. A black heir to the winter fortune emerges." There was a photo, Elijah standing proud, and a quote from Leanne. "Truth is not a threat, it's a light. And it's time we let it shine." The fallout was instant. Whispers at the country club, silent phone calls, donors pulling out from Evelyn's charity foundation, old friends turning their backs. Evelyn tried to sue, filed a defamation claim. But the moment the letter from Henry's father surfaced, the one she tried to hide, her case fell apart like rotted wood. That same week, the Winter Family Board called an emergency meeting. And Leanne? She walked Elijah right through the front door of that glass building in a red blazer that caught the morning light like fire. Head high, step slow. Henry was waiting. He looked at them both and said, "You ready?" Elijah nodded. And baby, let me tell you, when Evelyn entered that boardroom, thinking she still had power, she didn't know that the man she'd erased was about to sit in a chair she never wanted him to see. And right before the meeting began, Someone wheeled in a portrait, not of Henry, not of their father, but of a dark-skinned boy, holding a toy car, smiling. Elijah, at age 6, the only photo Mercy House had left. Henry hung it up himself, right there, on the wall, above the Winter family crest. Evelyn didn't speak, not at first, but her eyes, oh baby, her eyes were screaming, and as Leanne stepped out of the room, the elevator doors closing behind her, she whispered to herself, "Fire don't scare me, baby. It only teaches me what's worth saving." But just when she thought the war was done, her phone buzzed. A message, no name, just 5 words. Sometimes what's written in ink ain't the truth carved in stone. The message was short, cold. "You should check the will." No signature, no number, just a whisper from the shadows. Leanne sat alone in the garden behind the mansion, her fingers curled around the edge of that letter like it might bite. Henry had gone back to the firm. Elijah was resting after the board meeting, his first taste of a life he was never meant to inherit. But Leanne, she couldn't rest. Not yet. She called Mr. Whitlow, the Winter family lawyer, asked to see the original inheritance documents, all of them. He hesitated. "Well, there is one sealed addendum," he said finally, "written 5 years ago. Not public. Not even Henry knew." Her stomach dropped. "Who signed it?" A pause, then, "Mrs. Evelyn Winter." She requested a copy, went to the office in person, sat at that long oak table in a room full of heavy air and heavier history. The file was thick, most of it legal language meant to confuse. But toward the end, written in her cruel looping hand, "Should any illegitimate child attempt to claim inheritance, particularly one of questionable origin, my personal shares shall be immediately transferred to the Western Trust, thereby removing them from reach. This is to protect the dignity of the Winter name." Below it, her signature, a notary stamp. Leanne read the words twice, 3 times. Illegitimate, questionable origin. Protect the name. That wasn't just racism, baby. That was strategy, a trap written in law. Leanne folded the page with slow, careful hands, like she was holding a knife. She called Henry. He arrived within the hour, tie undone, eyes full of worry. "She locked you out," Leanne said softly. "If Elijah claims his share, her clause activates. She gives everything away to a trust she controls." Henry swore under his breath. She planned this from the beginning. She knew the truth might come out, and she made sure it couldn't touch her. Leanne looked up at him. "You still want to do this?" she asked. "Still want to fight for Elijah?" Henry's jaw tightened. "She's my mother, but he's my brother, and I'm not living off a lie." Leanne nodded. "Then we go around it." She met with an attorney of her own that night. Black woman, sharp as glass, quiet as a storm brewing. They spent hours drafting new documents, a legal challenge, because Evelyn's clause only worked if Elijah demanded inheritance. But what if he didn't? What if Henry gave it freely? What if Elijah became co-executor instead of claimant? That next morning they called a private hearing. Just the 3 of them. Henry, Elijah, and Evelyn. She walked in wearing all white, like grief or defiance. Leanne didn't speak. She just watched. Henry stood first. "I've amended the estate," he said, voice firm. "Elijah is no longer a beneficiary. He's an equal executor. We'll make all decisions together." Evelyn's face twitched. "You can't do that," she hissed. "He's not family." Henry looked at her. Tired, calm. "Yes, he is." She stood slowly, turned to Elijah. "You think you've won?" she whispered. "But blood doesn't lie." Elijah didn't even blink. "You're right," he said. "It doesn't." And then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a DNA report. Leanne had ordered it weeks ago, just in case. "Henry and I," Elijah said, placing the paper on the table, "are 99.4% match. Your husband was my father. Which means," he leaned in close, "your war is with him, not me." Evelyn stared at the paper, didn't touch it, didn't say a word. She just turned and walked out. But just before she reached the door, she paused, looked over her shoulder, and smiled, not with joy, with something else. "You think this ends here?" she said. Leanne tilted her head. "No, I think this is where you end." That evening, a letter arrived, delivered by hand. No return address, just 2 lines inside. "She's not done." And neither is the family you never knew she kept hidden. Family kept hidden. Leanne read it again and felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Every family's got a shadow, but some shadows are living, breathing, and waiting to be found. Leanne read the letter 3 times. Her fingers gripped the page like it might pull her into the past itself. She's not done, and neither is the family you never knew she kept hidden. Evelyn had secrets layered like silk, but this was something colder, older. The next morning, Leanne met Henry and Elijah at a small cafe off Peachtree. No press, no lawyers, just the 3 of them, and the weight of a question too heavy to ignore. "She kept someone else hidden?" Elijah asked, brows furrowed. Leanne nodded slowly. "I think Evelyn's war with the truth didn't start with you." Henry was quiet, too quiet. Then he looked up. "My father had a sister," he said suddenly. "Aunt Marion. I barely remember her. My mother said she moved abroad years ago, that she was unstable." "Unstable?" Elijah asked. Henry nodded. "She always said Marion fell in love with the wrong man. A jazz musician. Black." Evelyn cut her off completely, said she was lost. Leanne felt the breath leave her body. "Elijah," she whispered, "you might not be the only heir she tried to erase." They got to work that day. Old records, international calls, photo archives, and finally, an obituary. Marion Winter Edmonds. Died in London 8 years ago. Survived by 1 daughter, Soleil Edmonds Winter, a black woman. Leanne stared at the screen. "Baby," she whispered. "There's another." Elijah leaned closer. "Soleil." Henry sat back, pale. "Which means—" He looked at Leanne, at Elijah, then the screen again. "There's someone else who has claim, not just to the inheritance, to the name." Leanne tracked her down through a gallery in Brixton, London. A photographer. Bold, brilliant, dark skin kissed by sunlight, work drenched in black beauty, ancestry, and fire. She emailed her. No games, no lies, just truth. A week later, Soleil responded, "I know who I am. I just didn't know the Winters were still watching me." And she agreed to meet. 2 weeks later, Leanne, Henry, and Elijah stood outside a gallery in London, rain tapping the sidewalk like secrets knocking on glass. She walked in late, wearing gold hoops, brown leather, and a gaze that didn't flinch. "You must be the American side of the shame," Soleil said dry. Elijah smirked. "I guess that makes you the British chapter." They sat, talked, for hours. Soleil told them what Marion never could. That Evelyn paid her father to disappear. That Marion was locked out of the family trust, the house, everything, for loving the wrong man. That she died in a 1-bedroom flat, with paintings stored under the bed and bills piled high. "I never wanted their money," Soleil said. "But I do want their name. Not for pride, for justice, because my mama died whispering her brother's name, and nobody ever answered." Leanne looked at her. "You just did." And that night, for the first time in the Winter family's history, 3 black heirs sat at the same table, laughing, plotting, grieving, rebuilding. The next morning they returned to the mansion, together. Evelyn was waiting, of course, her posture sharp as ever, but her eyes worn. Henry stepped forward. "Meet your niece," he said. Soleil didn't smile. She simply said, "I'm not here for your approval. I'm here to collect the truth you buried with my mother." Evelyn didn't blink, didn't move, but her voice, colder than before. "You think you formed a little army?" "No," Elijah said. "We found our family." And as they turned to leave, Evelyn called after them, "You're standing in a house your bloodline could never build." Leanne turned, and her words hung like thunder. "Then it's time to build our own." But just before they walked out, Henry's phone buzzed. A message from the Winter Board. "A vote has been called. Majority interest is shifting. Evelyn wants the estate dissolved." Dissolved, baby. She wasn't going to hand over the kingdom. She was going to burn it down. Power don't fall just because truth knocks. Sometimes you gotta tear the whole house down, brick by brick. When Henry read the message out loud, the cafe fell into silence. Even the background noise, the cups clinking, the quiet jazz, the breath of London rain, seemed to hush. Evelyn had called a vote. She wasn't just fighting the heirs. She was going to liquidate the estate, sell the Winter Mansion, split the trust, destroy the board, burn every record of the family's legacy before it could belong to them. She's scorched earth, Soleil said, arms crossed. She knows she can't stop us legally, so she's going to make sure we inherit nothing but ashes. Henry's jaw clenched. She has enough voting shares to push it through unless... He looked at Leanne, eyes heavy with the weight of the impossible. Unless we find someone with enough equity to block it. Leanne tapped her fingers, thinking. Then she paused. There was someone, one of Evelyn's oldest allies, her goddaughter, a media heiress named Portia Langley. She was rich, powerful, and, for reasons unknown, had always worshipped Evelyn. If we can flip Portia, Leanne said, we might have a chance. Henry shook his head. She's loyal. Leanne smiled, slow and knowing. Then it's a good thing I know how to talk to women who've never been told the truth about where their power really comes from. Portia Langley lived in a penthouse so high it looked down on the clouds. She answered the door in silk and suspicion. Let me guess, she said. You're the wife. I'm the truth, Leanne replied. Portia raised a brow. Cute. They sat across from each other, like queens in a silent chess game. Leanne didn't flatter, didn't beg. She told her everything about Elijah, Soleil, the will, the inheritance, the fire, the claws, the threats. And then she said, Evelyn taught you how to hold power, but she never taught you what to do when the people you stepped on rise up to claim theirs. Portia was silent. Her fingers rested on a wineglass. You want me to betray her, she said. No, Leanne said gently. I want you to choose who you want to be now. A long pause, and then Portia stood, walked to her safe, pulled out her shares, and handed them over. I always wondered what the truth felt like, she whispered. Turns out it's heavier than diamonds. The board met 2 days later. London, 14 members. Evelyn walked in, dressed in mourning black, like she was attending the funeral of her own empire. She smiled when she saw the paperwork. I've already filed. The estate will be dissolved. Henry's shares are irrelevant. This ends today. Then Portia walked in. Evelyn blinked, stumbled. What are you doing here? Portia smiled softly. Correcting my mistakes. She handed the documents to the chairperson. With Portia's votes, the board shifted, and the motion to dissolve failed. 7-7, deadlocked. And in that silence, Henry rose. He handed over one more document, prepared with Leanne's lawyer. It transferred half of his voting power to Elijah. The room gasped. And Evelyn? She sank into a chair. Because now, the tie-break belonged to the son she tried to erase. Elijah stood. No grand speech, no rage, just this. I vote no. This house doesn't get to disappear. Not until every story inside it is told. That night, Evelyn sat alone in the winter garden, where it all began. Leanne found her there. Moonlight wrapped around her like silk she didn't earn. You've taken everything, Evelyn whispered. No, Leanne said. I restored what you tried to destroy. You don't belong in this family. Leanne stepped forward. I am this family, and I'm the reason your grandchildren will know the name Elijah Winter. The reason Soleil's art now hangs in the East Wing. The reason your husband's truth will be framed in the library you locked for years. She leaned in close. You tried to keep your kingdom pure. But baby, it was always broken. We just picked up the pieces. And then she left Evelyn there, alone with the weight of her own silence. But baby, the past wasn't done yet, because just before the week ended, a letter arrived. No return address, just a golden wax seal. Inside, a second will, older, hidden, signed by Henry's father. And it changed everything. Some truths don't shout. They wait, patient, quiet. And when they rise, baby, they rearrange the world. The envelope came wrapped in gold seal and silence. No note, no sender, just one name pressed into the wax. Edmund Winter. Henry opened it in the study. Soleil stood beside him, arms folded. Elijah paced by the window. Leanne sat still, because her spirit already knew. This wasn't just a will. This was a reckoning. Inside, yellowed parchment, creased at the folds, dated 27 years ago, before the estate trust. Before the fire, before Evelyn finished rewriting history, Henry read it aloud. To my heirs, whomever they may be, this letter is my true intention. He looked at Leanne, then continued. I built this family name on profit, but my soul grew tired of pretending my hands were clean. I loved a woman named Naomi. She gave me a son. I loved my sister, Marion. She bore a daughter who was cast out for who she loved. Elijah's breath caught. Soleil wiped one silent tear. Evelyn will not honor them. She never did. So I leave this. My personal shares, my voting power, my rights as patriarch of the Winter name, to those who carry the legacy of the women I loved and the children born from courage, not convenience. Then, in bold ink, to Elijah, my son, to Soleil, my niece, split evenly, not for wealth, for witness, because stories buried are still stories true. Signed, Edmund Winter. The room went still. No one spoke for a long time. Not even Henry. Because what do you say? When the man they all thought was a coward, turns out he tried to tell the truth all along? Leanne stood, walked to the fire, held the letter over the flames for a second, then folded it carefully. No, she said. This one stays, because some things need to be remembered. News broke within hours. Secret Winter will discovered. Black heirs legally named. Family legacy rewritten in 48 hours. Winter matriarch silent amid explosive revelations. The world was watching now, not just out of curiosity, but because something was shifting. A rich white name had just been handed to two dark-skinned descendants. Not by pity, not by accident, but by truth. Leanne stood in the Winter Mansion's great hall that evening, as workmen arrived. Are you sure? One of them asked. She nodded. Take down every portrait in this hallway. Leave the wall blank. By midnight, the east wing was bare, and in the morning, they unveiled a new centerpiece. One frame, tall, wide, lit by soft golden light. Inside it, 3 portraits, side by side. Elijah, Soleil, Naomi and Marion, smiling, finally framed in full color. Below them, in etched brass, the Winter bloodline, dark-rooted, truth-grown. The press was stunned. The board was silent. But the people, especially the black women who read every headline, watched every video clip, they saw something rare. Restoration. And baby ain't nothing louder than justice that finally arrives. But Evelyn, she hadn't spoken in days. And on the 7th day after the will surfaced, she disappeared. Left the mansion, left the country. Just gone. No press statement, no apology. Just a note left on her dressing table, addressed to Henry. You were always meant to lead. I just couldn't accept the world you chose. Henry didn't cry. He simply closed the door behind him. And that night, Leanne lit a candle in the hallway. For Naomi, for Marion, for all the names that were never said in that house, until now. But just as the flame flickered, a knock came at the front door. 3 gentle taps. Leanne opened it, and saw a woman, brown skin, gray locks wrapped in gold cloth, eyes like oceans. She held a small leather notebook in her hand, and said, You don't know me, but I knew Naomi, and I have something she wrote for her son. Some mothers never get to raise their children, but they leave breadcrumbs of love, so their babies can find their way home. She stood in the doorway like memory itself, wrapped in sunlight and sorrow. Her voice, low, steady, the kind that's carried lullabies and last goodbyes. My name's Miss Thelma, she said. I was Naomi's best friend, her soul sister. She gave me this journal in case something ever happened to her. Told me to keep it safe until he found his name. Leanne stepped aside without a word. Some moments don't need permission. Thelma handed Elijah the journal with both hands, like it was sacred, because it was. The leather was cracked at the edges, the initials NH carved into the corner. Inside, pages filled with loops and curves, ink faded but fierce. Elijah sat in the library, the same library where Leanne found the first letter. But this time, the ghosts were quiet, listening. He opened the book, read aloud. My sweet boy, if you're reading this, it means you found a truth they tried to bury. And baby, I need you to know, none of this was your fault. Leanne watched his hands tremble, but his voice never cracked. They told me I wasn't fit to raise you. That a black girl from Auburn Avenue had no place loving a man like your father. They said I'd ruin your life before it even began. A page turned. But you were never a mistake, Elijah. You were the morning after the storm. You were the reason I kept singing, even when the world stole my song. Soleil wiped a tear. Henry sat silently, head bowed. They took you from me before your first birthday. Told me it was better that way. Better for you. Better for them. But I never stopped writing to you. Page after page. Letters, drawings, stories. A lullaby Naomi used to hum under her breath. And at the very end, a single photo. Naomi holding baby Elijah. Smiling. Tired eyes, but proud. Like a woman who knew her love would last longer than her body. If you ever find this, my son, know that you were born of love, not scandal, not shame. And wherever you go, I am with you. In your hands, in your skin, in the truth that finally rose. Elijah pressed the journal to his chest. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. Because sometimes a mother's love speaks across decades and still arrives on time. Later that evening, Miss Thelma pulled Leanne aside. I knew Evelyn, she said. Back in the day, she was always afraid of things she couldn't control. And Naomi was freedom. Leanne nodded. I guess fear can't stand next to light. No, baby, Thelma said with a faint smile. Fear shrinks, but truth expands. She reached into her purse, pulled out a small velvet box. Naomi wanted him to have this too. Inside, a gold chain, simple, elegant. The back engraved, Elijah N. Winter. Always enough. Leanne gave it to him that night, and when he clasped it around his neck, the whole house felt like it exhaled, like it had been holding its breath for years, waiting for him. By the next morning, things had shifted. The staff called Elijah Mr. Winter. Neighbors began to nod with respect, and when Soleil returned to London, she left a promise behind. I'm starting an exhibit, she said. Black Legacy, the stories they tried to erase. Your mama's letters will be the heart of it. Henry, he stepped back, told the press he was no longer the sole heir. My brother and cousin are the future, he said. I'm just here to make sure the walls don't fall. And Evelyn, still gone. No statement, no apology, just silence. But baby, silence don't protect a legacy. Truth does. And in the quiet of that golden morning, Leanne walked into the ballroom. She stared up at the blank space above the fireplace, the one Evelyn said only family could hang on. She raised the final portrait with her own hands. Naomi, framed in gold, eyes warm, skin dark and divine, crowned not with jewels, but with dignity, and underneath a plaque that read, she was never a gold digger, she was a seed, and now we bloom. Justice don't always come loud. Sometimes it comes soft, like flowers rising where fire once burned. It had been 4 months since the storm broke, since Elijah stepped into his name, since Soleil rewrote the narrative with her camera lens, since Leanne, oh baby, planted herself like a tree and refused to be moved. The Winter estate didn't crumble, it transformed. What used to be cold halls now echoed with music, art, life. Leanne opened the East Wing to black artists and historians. Elijah's room, they called it now. Soleil's gallery shone across 3 countries. Henry quieter, gentler, served as steward, not ruler. But the most powerful change, it didn't hang on the walls. It lived in the soil. One sunny morning, Leanne stepped into the back garden, the one Evelyn used to keep trimmed like grief. Roses without color, paths that curved but went nowhere. Now, the garden breathed. Lavender, magnolia, sunflowers tall as forgiveness, and right in the center, a plaque in bronze, planted beneath the roots of a dark cherry tree. To every woman they tried to silence, may you rise anyway. That afternoon, a little girl ran through the garden, barefoot, laughing. Her mother called her name, Naomi. Leanne turned, smiled. A young couple waved from the gate, visiting from Birmingham. They'd read the story in the paper, named their daughter after the woman who never got to raise her son, but raised generations with her courage. I just wanted her to know where she came from, the mother said, voice thick with tears. Leanne knelt beside the girl, touched her hand. You got fire in you, little one, she said, and love that goes deeper than blood. Don't let this world tell you what you ain't. You already are. Naomi grinned, twirled in the sun. And baby. That's when Leanne knew. This wasn't just about Elijah, or Soleil, or even the winter name. This was about all of us. Every dark-skinned girl told she was too much. Every woman called a gold digger when she dared to rise. Every black legacy left out of the frame. They were all blooming now, right here, in this garden, in this house, in this story. That night, as the candles flickered low, Leanne walked through the mansion one last time. She paused by the portraits. Elijah, Soleil, Naomi, Marion, even Henry, off to the side, smiling at his brother. And at the center, a new one, Leanne, painted in oil and light, crowned not in gold, but in resilience. She carried her dignity like a crown. And baby, now the world could finally see it. And now I leave you with this, baby. They said she didn't belong in that house. But now her portrait hangs in the golden frame above the fireplace. If this story touched your heart like it touched mine, leave a word below. Aunt Grace is always here, with stories for souls that been through the fire and came out shining. Not every wound bleeds. Some just burn, quiet, slow, from the inside out. It was a warm afternoon, no clouds, no rush, when the letter came. Thick envelope, aged paper, gold seal, and 3 letters heavy as iron. E.W. Evelyn Winter. Leanne took it with steady hands. Henry stood at the library door, holding it like it might explode. It came from the bank, he said. She left instructions to deliver it only to you. Leanne didn't answer, didn't thank him. She climbed the stairs alone, barefoot, past the portraits that now showed the faces Evelyn tried to erase. She stepped into the matriarch's old bedroom. It smelled like dust and dead perfume. The air was still. She sat down slowly, held the envelope like it was breathing, because that letter, it burned even while sealed. When she finally broke the wax, the sound of it cracked through the silence. Inside, 1 page, handwritten, blue ink, that same elegant, cruel script. Leanne, if this letter has reached you, it means I've finally lost. And I suppose that's the only way I'd ever tell you the truth. Leanne read slow, each word like a step deeper into the cold, calculated mind of a woman who confused control with love. I fought you from the moment I saw you, not because you weren't good enough, but because I knew you would outshine everything I spent my life polishing. You didn't belong in my house, Leanne. You belonged above it. She paused. Those words didn't sting. They revealed. I saw the way Henry looked at you, like you were the sun, and I hated that light, because I didn't have it. I tried to cut you down, with smiles, with laws, with fire, but you never bent. Leanne's eyes welled, but not from sadness, from the weight of something she never expected to receive. Acknowledgement. You were never a gold digger. You were gold, and I was the dirt too proud to admit it. She closed her eyes. That sentence wasn't an apology, but it was a surrender. I will not be remembered kindly, and that I accept. But if they ever speak my name again, let it be only to say she stood in the way of a woman who deserved the whole damn sky and lost. Signed, Evelyn Margaret Winter Leanne, folded the letter like a secret she was finally done carrying. She didn't burn it, didn't hide it. She placed it in the velvet box, beside Naomi's journal. Not for forgiveness, for history. Later that evening she handed the letter to Henry. Didn't explain, didn't need to. And when Elijah and Soleil came into the room, there was a stillness, not of grief, of closure. She said what she needed to say, Leanne murmured, and I heard it. That night, the house was quiet in a new way. No ghosts, no war, just the deep hush that follows when a storm finally leaves for good. The next morning, a sleek black envelope arrived. Edges sharp, letters gold. The Legacy Gala, International Celebration of Lineage and Resilience. Theme, Women Who Rewrote Bloodlines. Top of the list, Leanne Hayes. Winter Elijah read it first. Soleil smiled like she'd just seen prophecy fulfilled. And Leanne, she looked out into the garden, where the flowers Evelyn once cut back were now rising wild and unbothered. Is this the end? Elijah asked softly. Leanne looked at him. No, baby, she said. The end don't come when the storm clears. It comes when the tree bears fruit. And that fruit is almost here. Some stories don't end. They bloom. They pass through hands, across names, beyond blood, until they become legend. The Legacy Gala was held in Savannah. Spanish moss hung like history from the trees. The ballroom glowed soft, gold, and proud, full of faces that carried generations in their eyes. That night, the program read like a resurrection. Doctors, artists, teachers, elders, activists, all black women, all honored, all unstoppable. But the final name brought the house to stillness. "And now," the host said, her voice thick with reverence, "we recognize the woman who didn't just enter a legacy, she rewrote it." The room rose before Leanne even reached the stage. Elijah stood first, then Soleil, then Henry, quietly wiping a tear. Leanne stepped into the light in a deep emerald gown, skin glowing like the answer to a prayer. She didn't hold a speech, just a journal, Naomi's. She opened it, turned to a page written in faded blue, and read, "To the black woman they called too loud, too dark, too ambitious. Keep going. The same world that tried to dim you will one day need your fire to survive." Silence. Then a rising swell of applause that sounded like thunder, wrapped in joy. And when she left that stage, baby, she didn't walk. She floated. 2 weeks later, the Winter Mansion opened its doors to the public, not as a symbol of wealth, but of reckoning and restoration. The East Wing became a permanent gallery. Legacy in bloom. Black hairs of a white name. Photos of Elijah as a boy. Soleil's mother Marion on a beach in Jamaica. Naomi singing to a baby wrapped in a thrifted blanket. And at the center, framed in gold above the fireplace, Leanne, not posed, not perfect, just real. Eyes steady, lips soft, skin glowing with that deep, holy beauty Evelyn once called too much. And beneath the portrait, carved into the stone, she was never a guest in this house. She was the foundation. The plaque shimmered like sunrise. Aunt Grace will tell you this now. Leanne didn't get her justice in a courtroom or a bank. She got it in the way Naomi's name now lived on children's tongues, in how Elijah walked into boardrooms with his head held high, in how Soleil's photographs taught girls in London that art can be revolution. And baby, she got it in how Evelyn's name, once feared, was now just a footnote in a story that didn't belong to her. One day a little girl visited the house with her school. Dark skin, hair in braids, maybe 8, maybe 9. She stopped in front of Leanne's portrait and whispered, "She looks like me." Her teacher smiled, kneeled beside her. "That's because she made room for you to be seen." And in that moment, everything made sense. Every silence, every insult. Every night Leanne stood alone in a house that wasn't made for her. It all led to this, a frame, a fire, and finally, her name. They said she didn't belong in that house, but now her portrait hangs in the golden frame above the fireplace. If this story touched your heart like it touched mine, leave a word below, baby. Tia Grasa is always here, with stories for souls that been through the fire and came out shining.